Welcome back to the Pixel Tea. I'm going to sip on some truth, hotter than magma. We've got magma on the move, folks. Today's stream, tectonic truths, subduction zones, and perhaps to another great reset. But welcome back. I think I already mentioned welcome back. Welcome back. So there's a lot going on in this world right now. There's volcanoes going off, a lot of earthquakes, and some interesting weather. So let's look into these volcanoes, the earthquakes, the subduction zones. And again, let's tie in the ancient prophecies, for example, like mud floods, and them leading up to what we reference or know as a pole shift. So let's start with the basics before we go full apocalypse mode. The Earth's surface isn't still. It's floating on a pot of bubbling stew called the mantle. These floating crusty plates, they're called tectonic plates. And when they get mad, we feel it. The subduction zones, that's when one plate slides under another, like Earth's trying to fold itself up. It creates earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions, mostly around what we call the Ring of Fire. These zones don't just shake cities, they give birth to megathrust earthquakes. So I'm going to play a video eventually that's going to give us a good visual aid of what's going on with these volcanoes, particularly here in North America. But before I do that, good to see you, Alki. Arpol, buenos dias. It's not buenos tardes for me yet, but buenos dias. Good to see you too, Rachel. Thanks for stopping by. Those who are aware of what's going on find this kind of information fascinating. And I'm going to tie in together through Captain's Log. What's today? The 10th, July 10th, 2025, of cosmic alignments. And we'll see next year what this, if I'm still at this YouTube stuff, what the coincidences of tracking these celestial bodies. Let me know if the music is too loud over my voice. So this is a video titled "The Deadly Cascade Volcanoes Are Waking Up. Is a Mega Eruption Coming?" So on my last stream, I was showing you an image called the Squatter Man. And that event, that last time that it had happened and how it influenced humanity. And it looks like we're setting up for another Squatter Man effect, or also known in plasma studies as a Z-pinch event. So the Earth seems to be charging up, and let's look in to other people's awareness about this event. But first, let's learn a little bit about these subduction zones.
Beneath the serene beauty of the Pacific Northwest lies a chain of sleeping giants, majestic snow-capped volcanoes that have shaped the land for millennia and could, at any moment, reshape it again. The Cascade Range, stretching from Northern California to British Columbia, is home to some of the most dangerous volcanoes in North America. Towering over cities like Seattle and Portland, these volcanoes sit silently now. But silence, in geology, is never a guarantee of safety. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted with the force of hundreds of atomic bombs, flattening forests, choking skies, and shocking a nation. That was just one volcano. There are over a dozen more, and recently, subtle signs, swarms of earthquakes, shifting ground, whispers of gas from hidden vents, have begun to stir beneath their surface. Could this be a sign of what is to come? Are the Cascade volcanoes waking up? Let's find out. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button and like this video, as it's the best way to support this channel. The Cascade volcanoes owe their existence to a dramatic tectonic process that occurs deep beneath the Earth's surface. Along the western margin of North America, the Juan de Fuca plate is slowly sliding beneath the North American plate in a process known as subduction. As the oceanic plate descends into the mantle, it heats up and begins to release water and other volatiles. This lowers the melting point of the overlying mantle rock, producing magma that rises through the crust, ultimately feeding the volcanoes of the Cascade Arc. This subduction zone creates a volcanic arc that spans more than 700 miles, forming over a dozen major volcanoes and many smaller cones, domes, and fissures. Notable peaks include Mount Shasta and Lassen Peak in Northern California, Mount Hood and the Three Sisters in Oregon, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, and Mount Baker in Washington, and Mount Garibaldi.
I was really happy when I found this video because I knew that there were this network of volcanoes, but I didn't realize how close these were. Once they brought this onto a map and gave us the visual aid of it, I thought, oh my, this would be a mega earthquake that would go off once all of these different volcanoes released their pressure points.
In British Columbia. The type of volcano most common in this arc is the stratovolcano, steep, conical, and built from alternating layers of lava, ash, and pyroclastic material. Unlike the shield volcanoes of Hawaii, stratovolcanoes are known for their explosive eruptions, which can have devastating consequences for the surrounding regions. These eruptions are driven.
So even just that last few seconds showing how these pressure points are released, they are micro versions of this macro pressure that's going to be released at some point and has been released before, in my opinion.
By thick, viscous magma that traps gases until the pressure becomes unbearable and is released in violent bursts. The combination of geological activity, population density, and limited public awareness makes the Cascades one of the most dangerous volcanic regions in the world. The history of the Cascade volcanoes is one of awe-inspiring eruptions and long periods of deceptive calm. One of the most iconic events in American geological history occurred on May 18, 1980, when Mount St. Helens erupted catastrophically. After 2 months of seismic unrest and visible swelling, a massive landslide, the largest in recorded history, unleashed the volcano's northern flank, triggering a lateral blast that devastated nearly 230 square miles of forest. Ash clouds rose 80,000 feet into the atmosphere, paralyzing air traffic and depositing ash as far as Oklahoma. The eruption released 24 megatons of thermal energy, about 1,600 times the power of the Hiroshima bomb. Though many were evacuated in advance, 57 people still lost their lives. and the eruption caused billions of dollars in damage. Then, in September 2004, after years of quiet, Mount St. Helens stirred back to life. Over the next 3.5 years, it produced a slow-moving, dome-building eruption that steadily extruded lava into the crater. Though less explosive than in 1980, it was a powerful reminder that the volcano remains active and is capable of an eruption anytime. But Mount St. Helens is not the only Cascade volcano with a history of eruption. Mount Rainier, the tallest peak in the range, has erupted multiple times over the past 10,000 years. Its last significant eruptive period occurred around 1,000 years ago, making it one of the more historically active volcanoes in the Cascades. Mount Hood in Oregon erupted in the 1790s, and geologists believe it is capable of erupting again with little warning. Mount Shasta in California has erupted multiple times in the past 4,000 years, and Mount Mazama's massive eruption, roughly 7,700 years ago, formed the iconic Crater Lake, burying the region under meters of ash. These historical eruptions remind us that while the Cascades may slumber, they are never truly asleep. In the past year, subtle but noteworthy seismic activity has been recorded beneath several Cascade volcanoes, raising questions about what lies beneath their calm appearance. Most notably, a swarm of over a dozen earthquakes, each less than magnitude 2.0, was detected beneath Mount Adams in early 2025. Though too small to be
There are thousands of earthquakes happening around all of these volcanoes right now. Thousands. So these are building up and they're going to release their pressure.
felt on the surface, the swarm prompted increased scrutiny from scientists at the U.S. Geological Survey and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. Similar low-level seismic events have continued at Mount St. Helens, which has remained intermittently active since its last eruptive phase ended in 2008, while Mount Rainier and Mount Hood have also shown minor quakes consistent with their typical behavior. Though not currently waking up, the volcanoes are under close watch, as the shift from routine activity to real warning can happen quickly, and often with little notice. Though the Cascade Range appears calm, scientists agree that another major eruption is inevitable. Volcanic activity in this region is driven by the ongoing subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate beneath the North American plate, generating magma beneath more than a dozen major volcanoes. Many of these
So this plate that he's talking about is, I'm not too far away because I'm here in California. And I've been paying close attention to this. So this is a little unnerving, but just important to know the information.
volcanoes have erupted within the past few thousand years and remain active today. Mount Rainier is considered the most dangerous volcano in the United States, not just for its eruption risk, but for its massive ice cover. Even a minor
So when I was reviewing some other channels this week, this is particularly Mount Rainier that has had over 1,500 earthquakes yesterday.
minor eruption could unleash deadly lahars racing toward Washington, leaving residents with less than 40 minutes to escape, threatening over 80,000 people and turning calm valleys into disaster zones. Mount Hood, just
Does that look familiar? You see all that flooding that's been happening? As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go over, review my community posts with you just to give you the pattern recognition and data of all of the areas that are flooding right now.
50 miles from Portland, Oregon, and Mount Shasta in Northern California, one of the largest volcanoes in the Cascades, also pose serious threats. Both lie near major cities and transport routes, and even small eruptions could disrupt water supplies, shut down highways, and blanket communities in ash. If Mount St. Helens erupts again, nearby towns, hit hard in 1980, could once more face catastrophic lahars, flooding, and ashfall, as the landscape still bears the scars and instability left behind. Other volcanoes, such as Glacier Peak, Mount Baker, and the Three Sisters, have shown signs of unrest and also pose risks to nearby towns. Lahars, ashfall, and pyroclastic flows are the most immediate hazards, but long-term impacts include power outages, air traffic disruption, crop failure, and economic losses potentially reaching tens of billions of dollars. Though the exact timing is uncertain, the science is clear. The Cascade volcanoes are active, unpredictable, and could erupt with little warning, putting millions of lives and vital infrastructure in the Pacific Northwest at risk.
Okay, so that was an excellent little visual aid that channel Earthly. Please check them out. Check out the rest of the video and make sure to give it a like. I left it in the chat, and it's also in the description of this stream for today. So please go ahead and give them a like, share, or a subscribe for this information. Let's see here. So how do the volcanoes, the earthquakes, and these subduction zones work? So we just saw the plate tectonics, the 101 course on how over here in North America those particular volcanoes work. The Earth's outer shell, the lithosphere, is broken into plates. These plates float on the semi-fluid asthenosphere. Where they interact, we get volcanoes, earthquakes, and mountain ranges. So that's how the zones work. The subduction zones. A subduction zone is where one tectonic plate is forced beneath another. That's what we just saw in the visual. These create deep ocean trenches and chains of volcanoes like the Ring of Fire. Volcano formations, as the subducted plates melt, magma rises through cracks in the crust, forming volcanoes. Pressure builds until there's an eruption. This can be explosive or slow depending on the magma. And then the earthquakes are stress from plate movements, causes faults, and eventually releases the energy that is an earthquake. The subduction zones are also responsible for the megathrust earthquakes, like in the 2004 tsunami. Let's see here. Here is what I have on my community posts for you guys. This morning, I was streaming a channel, California Seismograph Live Earthquake News. This is another great channel. It's a geologist talking about how Mount Rainier is, how many earthquakes are happening as of yesterday. This one was also really interesting. It is called the China Observer, and it was showing all of the landslides and quakes that have been happening over there that we don't even know anything about. They're not talking about it on mainstream media here in the United States. This was a news report showing all of the flooding that is happening in New Mexico right now. This is Mr. MBB333. He's been doing live streams giving us the Doppler of these flash flood warnings that are happening right now. Another great channel is Stefan Burns. He's another person that gives me some pretty good space weather. I had caught what I saw as the solar cross the other evening when I was outside. You can see the 1, 2, 3, and 4 image there. Again, the Earthmaster, another channel that pays attention to earthquakes. The other day when Indonesia had a massive eruption, I was showing the flooding that had happened in Texas. So I am invested in paying attention to what's happening with this weather. Good to see you, Miss Cynthia. Hello, Live and Learn. Thanks for stopping by. Yes, New Mexico is having massive flash floods right now. So we're going to show some videos as to why there's this flooding that's happening. Yes, potentially they are using technology, as we can see in these Doppler images, but it's also cyclical as well. So there's just a lot going on. I don't know how much this is true or not, but it is said that the ancient civilizations didn't have seismographs. They had stories. Gods of fire, demons beneath the earth, sky serpents, and fiery mountains. They were trying to make sense of tectonic chaos the only way they knew how. Like in the Bible, we read about Noah, but let's pause on the animal 2x2. It started with the underwater volcanic eruptions, the tectonic shifts, and the pole movement. A planet-sized panic attack is kind of how I can reference it. And across the world, cultures described a similar flood, not just from the sky, but from the earth breaking open. And it sounded like it could have potentially been a subduction zone party, to me anyway. So the prophecies linked to volcanic and seismic networks and the indigenous and ancient myths, Hawaiian, Native Americans, and many indigenous peoples spoke of fire gods or earth spirits deep underground, an ancient way to explain the tectonic activity. Prophecies from Hopi, Maya, and Christian texts mention fire from the earth, darkening skies, and floods. With the biblical connection or Noah's flood, some researchers believe the Great Flood was a real cataclysm, possibly caused by a sudden climate shift, underwater volcanic eruption like the Santorini or the Black Sea deluge, and crustal displacement or pole shift triggering massive tsunamis. Okay. This is from another channel and their team. Let's put this up here. FPV Angel and one of his team members, and her channel is called
Beneath the serene beauty of...
Sorry about that. Her channel is called One Conscience. And she's going to tell us briefly here. I'll drop the link for the rest of the video. But she's going to show us how these earthquakes and volcanoes move as well. You might have to turn up your volume a little bit because she's very soft-spoken in this video.
As these follow the sun across. However, there isn't just the sun in works here. There are other luminaries that need to be accounted for and will activate as the luminary moves over these areas, showing these are localized events. We also need to account for alignments, which have shown us in the past will affect the vibration of the grid as well. The vibration will be doubled up as the luminaries get within a certain degree point of each other. These degree differences are showing us where different technologies are located and giving us the double push. Remember, there are 144,000 of these angels below that need to be accounted for. Now, as it moves across the grid, we see the repeatable, recordable data that there's always the same points on surface that show the effects of what's going on below. These points are so much always the same that we can place them weekly on a map and redo it each week and basically have several maps all showing the same thing. Clusters will occur more north and south as it follows the sun ascent and descent towards the north and south regions based on seasons. However, again, it will always be repeatable and recordable to be the same month to month.
Oops, I clicked that too fast, but I'm going to drop the rest of the video in the chat for you guys. And it's, again, this video is also in the description of my video today. Please check out FPV Angel and his team's information on how they have understood how this realm works, the circuitry behind it. It's fascinating, and I highly suggest it. And those of you who have tuned into my streams before know that I am a big supporter of FPV and his team. So let's see here. Those of us that hang out here online have been introduced to what is called the mud flood theory. And is this a fact or is it just forgotten history? And it's both, in my opinion. So the mud flood theory, you've seen those buildings with basements that have windows that look like they're underground. Some folks say a global disaster, possibly involving volcanoes, liquefaction, and asphalt buried cities in mud just a few hundred years ago. And we can see that in these catastrophes that have been happening, especially these past 3 years, how these towns, these villages are being completely buried under debris from these floods and these earthquakes and these mountains, like even in Switzerland recently, last month, big part of that cracked and fell and buried a village, and then their river built up, and now it's all flooded right there in that valley. So we can see how mud flood theory is accurate. Believers claim there was a global catastrophe 200 to 400 years ago that buried cities in mud. The buildings with windows underground are cited as clues. the theory suggests advanced civilizations were wiped out and history was rewritten. This also ties into the volcanism and that massive volcanic eruptions like the Tambora in 1815 caused years of climate disruption, which everyone has referenced as the year without a summer. Layers of ash and mud from volcanic mud flows could be part of what these stories remember as well. So I want to play another video for you right now. Okay. Another great channel. This is Suspicious Observers from a year ago, and he's going to tell us about the cosmic thunderbolt. And this is what I've been keeping an eye out for with this space weather, which is this event. A built up energy of sorts. But he's going to give you a better explanation and the warning.
Folks, in the spirit of our recent reviews on the major events in our near-term future, let's hit the big one. The cosmic thunderbolt, the thunderbolt of the gods. Yes, it is real. The ancients drew it everywhere. The world expert, Dr. Anthony Peratt, recreated these features in the Los Alamos Plasma Lab, indicating it was a major space-to-ground electric discharge, a lightning bolt from the top of the sky that causes unfathomable devastation. The high-energy plasma discharges look like these forms rather than what we'd normally think lightning looks like, and it has the power to even carve the land below. Whether it was the early 1900s theorists or the thunderbolts in the last 40 years, many theories mostly involve events wholly taking place in space, with plasma flowing from one body to another, sometimes in a slow flow and sometimes as a discharge. But that wouldn't have the appearance here on Earth that resembled the petroglyphs, and it wouldn't cause the sort of devastation that would inspire the ancients. No, this is something that actually strikes the Earth, and it just so happens it's not theoretical. We actually know it happens scientifically. This is one of NASA's best visuals, the over-energization in a magnetar burst and the surge through the lowest L-shell magnetic fields, causing a downstrike that actually cracks the surface of a star. This has also been recreated in the lab, and there is a way this happens to the Earth. And yes, it's as terrifying as it seems. Let's go back to 1859, the Carrington event superflare, an approximately X80 solar flare that struck the Earth. It was so powerful that it almost surged the Earth's lowest L-shell fields. It stopped just short. But if it was any bigger, might have done it, and we were likely very close in 1859 to having another cosmic thunderbolt. Now, with Earth's magnetic field weakening, leaving our field less able to hold back the sun's fury, Earth likely couldn't handle another Carrington event today, and what's worse, it's probably the lower end of the sun's flaring capability in terms of the superflare cycles. Remember, it is now mainstream astrophysics that solar outbursts vastly more powerful than the 1859 storm occur on millennial timescales. Combine that with the weakening of Earth's magnetic field, and the occurrence of those flares on the same cycle as Earth's magnetic changes, told in the geology and sediment, and it is very likely that during this catastrophe cycle reset, the next age of Earth will begin with such a thunderbolt from the gods sometime in the next 25 years. Unlike a magnetar, Earth actually has a more vulnerable position in this strike scenario. The magnetar merely surges so much energy through its lower L shells that it arcs down, but when the sun inserts that energy, it will also be compressing those lowest fields closer to the Earth, making the discharge even more likely and more powerful. This is what many observers consider the grand finale of the disaster event that has already begun to unfold, and it's hard to disagree. Perhaps the survivors of the next one will draw it on rock once more. I will see you in the morning for the daily show.
Okay, so let's see here. I know on my last stream I was reviewing some of my images that I've collected through the years. So let's try that again. Let's see here. Hold on. Why can't I get it to do what I want it to do? Let's see here. There we go. So what you just saw, let's see here, so what we just saw in Suspicious Observers video, I think, is this image right here. That is also this. And the ancestors left us clues of when it happened last time. Okay. While I'm at that, let's see here. Let's do this again. I had shared a couple of links prior to the stream. And I don't know how many of you guys have seen. Oops. How did I do it last time? There we go. I don't know how many of you saw this film, 2012. But I recently watched it again. It's free on YouTube right now. I can share the link as well. But it had some interesting scenes that I wanted to talk about. But before I do that, let's talk about these solar cycles and pole shifts again, which to me is the Earth's reset button. I keep talking about that. Our sun goes through cycles. It bursts of energy, solar storms, magnetic flips. Some people believe we're due for a solar micronova, a mega flare that would trigger tectonic activity and flip the magnetic poles, which is this image here. Okay. The right amount of energy that would be released on one of these solar storms, and it would just hit just right and create that to happen. This is an image yesterday from the last storm that had hit, and you see the way that energy is coming. And that's when all of those earthquakes, those floods, and the volcanoes started erupting. The sun has 11-year activity cycles, but also longer grand cycles. High solar activity can impact Earth's magnetic field and even tectonics. Some say that that's hypothetical. The solar micronova theories, like those from Suspicious Observers that we just saw, suggest periodic bursts of solar energy that reset the Earth's surface. The magnetic pole shifts, Earth's magnetic poles are drifting faster than before. A full magnetic reversal pole shift has happened many times. The last major one was 780,000 years ago. Some theorists say magnetic instability can influence core heat, tectonic stress, volcanoes, and earthquakes. This is possible the catastrophic reset. Some believe a combination of the subductions triggered earthquakes, volcanic chains erupting, pole shifts, solar flares all lead to cyclical resets of civilization. So let's present again what I, oops. From the movie 2012, there was an interesting part of the movie. And I screenshot it because I didn't want to get a copyright for playing. Let's see here. First, he starts off with saying, there's a scientist that is showing him their data about the neutrinos from these solar storms and what it looked like when they were acting normal. And this is in the storyline. So then he shows a huge solar blast that comes from the sun. And it was so huge, and what to expect when it was going to hit the earth. He says it was the biggest eruption that we had seen in a long time. And he was saying that the neutrinos are causing the highest count that they had ever recorded. And he tells the other scientists for the first time ever he had seen this happen, but that's not what was worrying him. And he's speaking to this other scientist. So he takes them down. They're in this shaft down below where they're doing their research, and he takes them to this tank, and he says this water tank goes down another 6,000 feet. And he says it looks like the neutrinos coming from the sun have mutated into a new kind of nuclear particle. And he opens it up, and this sucker is just boiling. He says it's heating up the Earth's core. And suddenly it acts like microwaves. Let's see here. He says the neutrinos are causing the physical reaction that it begins to happen with the with that blast. And then there's another scene that comes when the main character, what is his name? I can't think of his name right now, but he's asleep, and it's showing the news, and it's showing a mass deletion of people in Guatemala, which predicts the end of time to occur, which is that they are talking about the Mayan calendar. And in the background, the news reporter is saying that we are heading for the biggest solar climax. What wakes the guy up is an earthquake. And this is the crack that is happening outside of his house, and he doesn't even see it because he's busy and he's trying to get to taking his kids on a vacation, and he doesn't even see these huge cracks. And we're seeing these big cracks happening all over the world right now. So the president in this movie is speaking to his daughter, and he tells her that there's an international endeavor underway. And he tells her that at this point, 46 nations are invested in finding out that they find out this data. So one of the other scientists contacts him to let him know that the Earth's crust is destabilizing with the heat of the core. And this other scientist is saying, you know, all our scientific advances and our fancy machines, and the Mayans saw this coming thousands of years ago. So isn't it interesting how these movies give us these small little disclosures as well? I could go on and on with different films that have given us these warnings, but I had just recently watched 2012 again, and I listened in on that, and I thought, oh, isn't that interesting how that data is looking very similar these days. Good to see you, Red. Thanks for stopping by. I'm talking about end of days prophecies and the weather, and just giving you guys an update on the weather. So let's see here. Am I done with that part of my notes? I think so. So here is another video that I want to share. I played Ken's streams last time. Oh, but before I do that, let's listen to One Conscience tell her what she thinks this red star that I'm looking for, which I think when this red star, Nibiru, Planet X, the red Kachina, when that comes into orbit, that's going to create the magnetic force necessary for a cosmic thunderbolt. But I thought we could listen to One Conscious tell us her ideas on what she thinks will happen when we see that red star come back into orbit.
Hello. Today I was going to go through some facts and then a couple theories. So, our Earth consists of different layers: the underworld, the surface world, and the heavens. The underworld is where the angels reside. Now, whether these are actual entities or not, I don't know. I have given both ideas of them being entities and machines a lot of thought. The systems of our Earth shows me that there is definitely a program grid in place that runs all of our Earth events. When this all began for me, I was interested in earthquakes, which is a very major form of Earth energy, and we see the release of it. Studying with FPV and Jimbo, I have gained unspeakable amounts of knowledge. What I learned is how our underworld is an electromagnetic grid that runs every function of the Earth, including, but not limited to, the sun and moon movement, winds, tides, earthquakes, volcanic activity. What happens is there are signals sent from this angel technology, and they hit the plates it is sent to. When that happens, it causes the technology to kick on, which then causes a vibration. We feel this as an earthquake. Some we don't feel because they're smaller in magnitude. These are typically how the everyday quakes are, which is definitely the path maker of the sun and moon. It forms a path by quaking north and south of the path. The charges then hold the luminaries on the path they travel. The larger quakes are typically caused from another signal, which is more energy being added to the original signal and released as a mega energy output spots. So, where does the extra signals come from? Well, one place I'm sure they come from are the planets. When different alignments happen, it triggers other technologies to send their signals as well. If these signals happen to be opposite forces, well, we end up with quite a bit of activity on Earth outpouring at the spots where the shale is weakened by natural reasons or man-made reasons. Not all technologies are running at the same time either. Some are daily pieces that have to do with every daily task. Some are sitting there waiting for the trigger to get hit in the underworld to get their turn of being online. This is where a bit of theory comes in. I have thought a lot about Nibiru. I have read many papers and watched many videos about it. It is even mentioned in ancient texts, and the Bible refers to wormwood. So, coming into this work and seeing how everything is like a circuit board, I began to think of Nibiru as a signal that would come from the west. After FPV revealed the far west Nazca lines that are outside of our known land, it gave me more to think about of this being a possibility. FPV placed a massive antenna westward that we have no knowledge of until now. If this massive antenna were to say fire up about every 3,600 years, and by the way, I'm using that number because reoccurring cataclysms visit the Earth around every 3,600 years. We do see evidence in depth of different ancient civilizations. However, this could be different time frames, or it could just be one event, and say one area got covered deeper due to the proximity, etc. Soup Peru disappeared about 3,600 years ago. Also, the last major explosion of Santorini occurred about 3,600 years ago. Science says 7,000 years ago, a tsunami generated west of Norway hit. Most coastlines bordering the East-North Atlantic were submerged. They also say 11,000 years ago, there was a colony under the Baltic Sea. It has been unearthed recently, and it's near Sweden. These, of course, are carbon dating done by science, which I don't really agree with. This could indeed be one event that occurred, or different events. If it's one event, the different elements would cause things to age or be preserved. So, this is really just a theory that could be the cause of the event or events that have occurred. As this technology is currently off, the closest that we have ever come to seeing anything like this would be a megaquake, and I really don't think that those come close enough to the power that would arrive if this Nibiru signal does turn on. When this catastrophe piece does turn on, it would definitely be a world-changing, land-altering energy, which is what people describe as a pole shift. So now we can see it isn't or wouldn't be a pole shift, but instead a powerful signal that would change the face of the Earth. Some land would of course sink and some would rise. This is all just part of the design system given to us by our Creator. So I simply traced that just a bit of history, and there's definitely events that have occurred that changed our world, the people in it, and the face of our land. Where there are events like these, there are signals and technologies being passed around. So yeah, I just wanted to put this idea out there for anyone that maybe is researching into the Nibiru and trying to figure out anything about it. I just wanted to relate it to the stuff we're doing, just to kind of give a different idea.
So she's suggesting that it is a channel that is activated, and that it's not necessarily a planet. And I thought that was kind of interesting, looking at it in terms of electromagnetism. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And then here is another news report from yesterday. Okay, this is really interesting. Hold on a minute here. Hold on a moment here. I'm having some technical difficulties. Darn it. Here it is. Okay. This is from World News Report today. This gentleman has a lot of really good information, but I love listening in on his take on space weather.
James Kaufman, World News Report today, July 9th, 2025. God bless you and yours, no matter where you are in the world. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell for critical future updates. Ladies and gentlemen, they destroyed my entire system last night. I guess they didn't like my videos yesterday. I've been working for 2 or 3 hours trying to restore it, but I have a doozy for you again. All right, let's take a look first at our KP index for the day. We can see it's a very quiet day. No solar winds. or plasma hitting the Earth currently. There are no substantial solar ones or plasma, according to all four of the KP indexes. Although the College Index does show 3 hours of a geomagnetic disturbance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where it gets crazy. We had another M flare, not a very powerful M flare. I believe it was around a 1.3, 1.4 M-class solar flare. The strange thing is it peaked at the exact same time as our larger solar flare that we had yesterday. Now, since the flare we had yesterday was not assigned to a sunspot group, I couldn't get a time on it unless I used our Absorption Prediction Center, which pinpointed the time to be the exact same peak time around 4:13, 4:19 as the flare that we had today. Tell me something is not causing those to occur at the same exact moment. The reason I did notice is because I remembered the absorption prediction being over Japan, the Philippines, parts of China, etc., and it looked exactly the same when I looked at it earlier this morning. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you all that, but I will show you all yesterday's video and then show you all what time today's actual flare peaked. It's unbelievable, more than a coincidence. All right, so we've had very little activity on our sun today, but we did have an M flare, an M 4.13 that started around 4:10, the exact same time that the other flare started. And I would guess that the peak was around 4:20. I will show you all that flare from yesterday's video. Although it wasn't assigned to a sunspot group, it was generated by sunspot group 4136, which is now named. And by the orange color, you can tell it's a beta gamma sunspot group.
So I thought that was really interesting that he's pointing in on this sunspot, and when these sunspots come, these seem to be the circuitry that creates these blasts of energy, like this. It releases and just zap. Those coronal holes give us more energy to surge. Like a whip.
Not yet fully complex, not a delta sunspot group yet. Today we have a 1% chance of having an X-class solar flare, a 35% chance of having an M-class solar flare. I think that should be increased. And we're running a strong C baseline again. So yesterday we had the M2.48 solar flare that was generated by sunspot group 4136 prior to it being named, as it was coming around the limb to become Earth-facing very shortly. Today, we had an M1.34 at the exact same time and over the exact same part of the world as the flare from yesterday. And since that sunspot has been named now, well, we can see it's now 4136, although we could have guessed that. And here is the solar flare from yesterday, just so you know I have the receipts. 412, it ends up dissipating around 425. Unbelievable, the same exact minutes as what occurred yesterday. If anyone can help me figure out why that might be, it'd be greatly appreciated in the comments below. Over to HMI intensigram, we see 4136, which has really moved a little bit further to the east. This is actually the east, and will become more Earth-facing every day. We also have 4135 that was just named. We have a total of 6 Earth-facing sunspots, with 4125 actually going around the far limb. And 4136 should be colored in orange, although they still have it as a simple sunspot. It's actually a beta gamma sunspot at this point. Heading over to our GOES, solar ultraviolet imager.
So I get it, this isn't everybody's thing, but I'm highly interested in this topic, and here are the receipts to prove. Here's the science and the data necessary to prove the theories that I've been talking about.
GOES 19 at 195 angstroms. We can see how many active sunspots we have coming around the limb this is the sunspot giving us all the trouble, but we seem to have a lot of activity coming around the limb.
Every time I see these images, I can't help but think of the Black Hole Sun song, because I'm guessing when the plasma is when it's showing that it's all black, that maybe that also is when this cosmic thunderbolt goes off in the prophecy of the skies darkening and such.
NASA and NOAA have also warned about this coronal hole causing a geomagnetic storm within a few days. So that's what our star looks like today, this moment. Now, we could call the fact that the two in-planet solar flares that occurred at the same moment at 4:10 UTC time a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. Something must have caused that to occur at the exact same time after not seeing an M flare for several weeks. The main purpose of this video is to show y'all that we're headed into a very active solar period over the next 45 days and maybe longer. Now you can barely see the pink halo around Neptune. That means Earth has a geomagnetic connection, or is just picking up a geomagnetic connection to Neptune. Let's see what happens over the next few days. It's going to become very active, and based on RCA's work about planetary positions, this is going to be a 45-day period that we won't forget for some time. Just moving a few days, you can see Neptune lights up with a full geomagnetic connection to Earth. We'll keep going because it gets much worse. And we do have then Saturn lighting up, and that's...
So now this is real time example of what One Conscience video was showing about the circuitry of proper alignments for the release of these energy points or Earth chakral points.
It's really bad because then we have Earth, the Moon, Saturn, and Neptune all lined up here. Not are they only lined up, we have geomagnetic connections to Saturn and Neptune, and this progressively will get worse. Let me show you what happens next. Just a few days later, 2 days later, we get another geomagnetic connection to Mercury, and we have the Moon, Venus, and Uranus lined up with these offsets, geomagnetic connections. These are going to be some days to remember. This is around July 20th. Now let's keep going. See if any of the big boys come into play. Now, once we see Earth, the Moon, Mercury, and the Sun lined up, and these two geomagnetic connections to the gas giants, we're in even more trouble. I don't know if it's going to let us go much further, but these are going to be hectic days, and that covers the month of July. So that's going to start in about a day or two. We're going to start seeing an uptick of solar activity and earthquake activity through this period. We're back on the busy side of the sun, if you will. You see that the moon is swinging. Well, there's another lineup really right there, and that's going to be August 1st. You can see the moon, Earth, Saturn, and Neptune lined up, and we have a geomagnetic connection to Mercury. We have, well, a lot of problems ahead. We'll go a little bit further and see how long it allows us. Well, it cuts us off there, and that's going to be one day before my daughter's birthday. We have 3 very strong geomagnetic connections. We'll soon perhaps have one to Venus. We definitely will have one to Jupiter and Uranus thereafter. So it might be longer than a 30 or 45-day period. We might be looking at 60 to 90 days of pure havoc on our star, and we should see an uptick in volcanic activity and, well, earthquake activity, of course.
So this is he was just paying attention to these alignments, and he was giving everybody a 24 to 48 hour window of being prepared for locations. If your local news stations and such have been paying attention to the seismic weather, or any if you're in a location near a volcano, be prepared in the ways that you can. You know, have water, have supplies, have routes that you need just in case there's something that happens within your location that you would need to evacuate. Let's see here. Hi, Austin. Thanks for stopping by. No such thing as planets. Space is fake. We live under a dome, like the first page of the Bible says. The purpose of creating infinite space is to hide God. This is Satan's playground. Well, I don't believe in planets either. That's why I chose what you see as my avatar for my voice today, is that I think it's energetic spheres that move and rotate like a kaleidoscope and a telescope. And when they align just right, that's when chaos occurs. And, that's what gives us our seasons. That's what gives us our weather, our oceans, all the frequency and vibration necessary within these energetic spheres. Let's see here. The last video I want to show you is going to be another one from Ken McClellan. The last stream I did, I played a video and he released this one as I was playing my last stream. And this is just going to bring all of it together again, because he's going to bring in ancient prophecy, artifacts, and pretty much confirm what World News Report today just spoke about.
To Apocalypse and Genesis. Did I ever tell you that Christianity existed long before Jesus? A humanized version of God was always part of religion. God as pantheistic, abstract of the all, was never satisfying. Even when deity was pictured in the heavens, priests attempted to make it human, so you and I might be created in the imago Dei, as it were. God was seen standing in the heavens above a cosmic cross at the axis, drawn as a super constellation of Aquarius, Phoenix, and Horologium, in one giant symbol for the god of life named He. Genesis 1:26 has Elohim, the twin gods who are one, saying, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." In the next verse, we're told the first humans were also hermaphrodites. Male and female created he them. So do you see the circled words in the old holy language? The axis from either end could be viewed as the god. First of Aries at the top, or Virgo at the top. Blue Kachina at the top, or red Kachina at the top. We were destined to meet mom and dad at the end of time, at both equinoxes. In this year of the cosmic cross, we find our new creation is finally due. The symbols for the god of life were the DNA molecule with two serpents intertwined, and the Ankh. And if they tell you that was just a pre-Hebrew concept, well then I would ask you to look just above the first written example of God's written name at Wadi el-Hol. Because what the Hebrews knew, way back in the time of Moses, was that they were teaching an Egyptian mystery. It had something to do with a little red star and a comet that returns to the eyes of the Sphinx at the periodic end of time. Chris Bledsoe thinks it will come by next March. But if you knew
Skywatchers know that these comets have been coming in to observation to the different astronomers. We just had reports a few weeks ago of a new comet that was coming in. So just keep an eye on these comets, folks.
anything about astronomy, he'd have you looking up come next month's new moon. The quadritic of Helios are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, four royal stars pointing out the cardinal directions. If the Bible points you to Michael, it's referring to Aldebaran. If it's saying to look for a white horse, as in Revelation 19, consider Pegasus. If you find Gnostic references to a lion man, look at next month's sign near Regulus, or that is Raphael. The thing to remember is that every 6,400 years or so, the sun blows up in this direction, and the solar maximum of cycle 25 has begun. Grab some extra food and water before the grid goes down, because even if the sun doesn't do it, saboteurs or missile-tossing nations could still do the trick. Like World War III, the coming market crash, or the next 6 plagues, the grid going down has been in the plan for years. 5 times a precession, there is a universal flood, despite any statements in the Bible suggesting this could never happen again. It's just not the next cataclysm. A flood follows ekpyrosis. I gave you this star of Venus so you might notice the symbol around it. The destroyer Tiamat, who brought flood, was considered part of the god of life, who comes to the axis of the equinoxes from time to time, as are the other two bodies of the Trinity that arrive with her. Not sure how well you can make out the marks bottom right, but the beard indicates we're talking about Orion. The mouth shows there was a solar flare at Orion's first of Aries, and the head points to the arrival of the Lamb of God, which some earlier civilizations might have called Baal, a god who didn't have a house of the zodiac until El provided him one. I believe Orion got his face burned off during a galactic wave that happens periodically, and the reason a blast from the sun can cause Earth problems is a matter of physics. In his book Worlds in Collision, Immanuel Velikovsky points out, a thunderbolt, on striking a magnet, reverses the poles of the magnet. The terrestrial globe is a huge magnet. A short circuit between it and another celestial body could result in the north and south magnetic poles of the Earth exchanging places. In fact, this is exactly the thing 19th century naturalists warned us about. According to William Bassett Walker's cyclical deluges, the southern waters will rush down upon the northern hemisphere, which will be once more submerged, whilst in the south, unknown continents will appear. He goes on to say the north will lose life except for whatever groups can cling to the highest tablelands and mountain ranges, with those few tribes falling back nearly immediately to barbarism in their utter desolation. The top stone is my best witness as to what happened last time. The bottom stone represents what happened at the creation 6 millennia before. The red star, Nibiru, traded pole and horizon with planet X, the blue Kachina. You might note the little symbol of life coming from the red star. This object, too, was considered part of the god of life. The Celtic god on the left, chopping down the tree of life, was named Jesus. The reference is to Orion in the time of a phoenix rising up in the south. The Mexican stones show our expected warning of the apocalypse came from Leo Virgo. It's logical, the myth would say, God rested on the seventh day, this being either the seventh day of approximately 1,000 years from the last creation, Psalm 90, verse 4, or 2 Peter 3, or it was a seventh Sar of the Sumerians, each of 3,661 years. In Ugaritic, that would have been written with 3 ones using the sexagesimal system, making the lion's paw of the Masons something of a Sumerian religious mystery. The stones suggest our warning from Orion would be a day of the Sol Invictus. The sun, moon, and planets would all be on one side of the planet above the horizon on the day Sol crossed Mintaka. And when we saw this, we would know the central sun has returned. So watch for Helios to once again hand the reins over to his son Phaeton, as occurred a precession ago, according to the Egyptian priests in Diodorus Siculus. The other day, my muse and best teacher did a mysterious drawing I realized was a star map of the present. The north-south axis is Pisces Aquarius to Leo Virgo, and our mystery appears in the southwest quadrant, sometime between the heliacal risings of Aldebaran and Regulus. In the myth, the line at the 7:30 clock position is where we run into stories of Sirius blazing and a Babylonian or Egyptian carpenter god laying out new heavens at a time when the Nile floods. I wonder if that story could have any connection to the tales of Jesus growing up in a carpentry shop, or represent, say, a beginning to our scheduled pole shift. Like everyone else, Mesoamericans had a deity in the north associated with one in the south. On the left, Anput, the wife of Anubis, our beast or wolf of the judgment, seems associated with Cassiopeia, the queen of heaven in the far north. The drawing beneath her shows the eye of God happening in the deep south. On the right, she is wearing another far northern constellation, Vulpecula the fox, as a headdress, only this time the eye of God is linked to the west. Up to now, we've been treating the eye of God as a conjunction of planet X with Nibiru, but I wonder if it might also be linked to a return of the blazing star, Sirius, in the southwest. Here, the one who inspires me was playing with symbols for her own name, the lotus and the rose, which she positioned upon the axis of the equinoxes. I found them symbolic of the 2 leading objects we're expecting, the blue and the red Kachinas of the Hopi, the 2 witnesses of John's revelation. I don't believe we've much time to wait for their appearance, but there is hardly any way, beyond signs embedded in the ancient stories, to divine a date. At this point, we should be looking at all scriptures and myths. We have reached the great year, and any creation story or legend of cataclysm might provide the relevant hint. It's seriously not like your government is going to tell you when something earth-shattering is just 3 days out. They just won't. Out of fear for the public safety, they'll classify it beyond ridiculous until it's too late. Back in the 12th century, there was a churchman named Joachim da Fiore, who said there would be 3 great ages of earthly religion. The time of the Old Testament belonged to the Father. The time from the New Testament belonged to God's Son. And then shortly after his own time, da Fiore predicted an age of the Holy Spirit. As with most denominations, this utopian thinker had taken a verse of Scripture and blown it out of context. In Joachim's case, he took chapter 11, book 3 of the Revelation to mean that the 1,260 days of the 2 witnesses actually stood for 1,260 years of the Son before beginning the Age of Spirit, one marked by a disintegration of the Mother Church and the start of time for universal love and liberty. The stone, however, says our 3.5 years are now due to begin. And oh, by the way, the Pope didn't think much of what Franciscan had to say. When the Trinity undeniably shows up, the sky is supposed to get turned around. My own interpretation is that the planet will roll, giving an appearance of 3 new stars doing cartwheels together. You can find the notion carved in stone around the world: Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, California, Nevada, Peru, Chile, Ireland, France, North Africa, India, Kazakhstan, Siberia, China. It is pretty obvious we are dealing with something people actually observed long ago, important enough to carve into stone for their descendants. Unlike the Bible, where it suggests only God the Father has a clue as to when he might be coming, some of the ancients had a clear idea that it would be later this year at the officially posted end of history. Not that it will be the end of the world. The planet will fare just fine with a few billion of us gone. But it is entirely time to remake human civilization. Time to stop watching billionaires play with their toy rockets, cavorting in Venice, or playing racist genocidal games because that's the mandate in their old holy book. My friends tire of me showing people sign after sign suggesting I simply tell you what I believe. Well, here it is. St. Augustine was right when he told us what is now called the Christian religion existed even among the ancients and was not lacking from the beginning of the human race until, quote, Christ came in the flesh, unquote. From that time, true religion, which already existed, began to be called Christian. To me, that is just the most glaring admission that the Catholic Church, purporting to perform the work of the Christ, has been run by the bloodiest bunch of child-abusing genocidal maniacs since the Aztecs were rolling human sacrifices down their pyramids, or the Hebrews started a race war 3,000 years ago. And they weren't the last genocidal religion to bless the planet. 26 millennia ago, our ancestors were painting on cave walls what was happening in the sky, like it was the day's headlines. And they tried to tell us we would find a claw or hand of God just above Pegasus, cautioning us to remember the calamity that had befallen them soon after the same sign. Native Americans would know that the sudden fall or rise of this hand would be a harbinger for the rise of Crux and its little red messiah above northern skies. So the most significant sign of the end of precession is the people of the North get to look at a little patch of sky they were never supposed to see. If you spoke the truth too plainly, you immediately became eligible for torture and execution at the hands of the Church, an institution ironically set up to remember the cycles of time. So students of the mysteries took to speaking in code to one another. Above you have a passage from Dante's Purgatorio, written in about 1315. In the next paragraph, he is trying to describe the pending arrival of our red star, but couching it in terms of classical Roman history. He uses Cato the Younger, a rebel at the time of Julius Caesar, to represent the Son of God in the light of Crux. Quote, the beams of those 4 luminaries on his face so brightly shone, and with such radiance clear, decked it, that I might behold him as the sun. 7 centuries ago, the Gnostic Dante foresaw the rise of Phaeton above the sun. In 1871, the Democrat head of the Masons and founder of the KKK, Albert Pike, called for 3 world wars, the final one being religious in nature, designed to exhaust the wealth of the nations and discredit the old religions. His plan? To introduce a religion of Lucifer as the one true thing. What I find most disgusting about the peddlers of sanctity running around in their dresses is their willingness to condemn each other to death for not memorizing the same lines or using the same name for their invisible God. So this year is to be different. The head Anunnaki is due back to straighten out the unholy mess we've gotten ourselves into. All the world is expected to see the return of his symbols for the living God at the Tree of Life, the axis of the equinoxes. And right after rapture, fire, and flood, we'll see who of us gets to return home. Let's get our wings back. Hashem bless you and keep you, now and forever. Take care.
Okay, so Ken always, I appreciate his videos because he gives us the antiquity and also celestial graphs for us to tie the information together. And I'm just really thankful that he shares his findings with us. Again, I am not here to tell anybody who to believe in and what not to believe in. These times, I feel, are going to get more and more intense. So whatever your faith system is, hold on to that with all your might and appreciate that you are a spiritual being and be a decent human being. I'm going to leave you with a closing prayer for all of you today. And I'm going to be honest, I liked to reference God as the creator of all things. So, divine creator of all things, in the midst of rumbling earth and roaring skies, we pause to breathe, to ground, and to remember that not all things are meant to be controlled, only understood. Protect us from fear and panic, and instead fill our hearts with wisdom, clarity, and calm. Bless our homes, our loved ones, and all those watching, that we may walk forward in faith, not in fear. May your light surround us, your peace flow through us, and your love anchor us through every storm, every quake, and every unknown. We release what we cannot change and trust that we are exactly where we are meant to be, safe, aware, and deeply blessed. I want to share this last image here. This is how I perceive in my mind's eye how these energetic spheres work above and within us. Those are all of the chakra points, and when they align, they give us an incredible show in the heavens. We're so little in comparison to this grand universe. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Thank you to all of the content creators whose videos I shared with you today. And I hope that you are all going to have an outstanding day. And I will see you guys around. Until we meet again, I'll see you next time. Stay safe and be blessed.
Where the stars align, we lose ourselves in the rhythm divine. Underneath the sky painted with dreams, we're chasing the echoes of silent screams. Caught in the spell of the cosmic night, where fantasies bloom in the pale moonlight. We'll let go